Alright everybody, so today I'm going to use the printed precision trickler to load my rounds today. I'm gonna have several powder choices to use, from really large kernels to ball powders. So first we're gonna start with the large kernel using an n568 here and load my 6.5 PRC. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and get started. So first we need to load our hopper here. The hopper has a really narrow tube, and the way it's designed, right, the powder just drops down and comes out from here, but just coming out of the box and the way it's set up, the powder falls out of this as you drop it into the hopper. So that's actually a problem. And so what we need is actually some kind of blocker here. So I'm going to see if I can find something here that I can use to block hopper exit from letting the powder spill out. So I just got a small piece of paper here. I'm gonna put that here to prevent it from spilling. So I've encountered this before when I first started using this. And then now I have a big jug of powder here, and this hopper tube is really narrow. And when I start pouring the powder flies. And so I need to pour really slowly. I think in the future I will actually end up using a funnel to do this. Yeah, so I gotta put this out really slow. And I need about half a pound for all the cartridges I have. And this should be about half the tube, maybe less. Okay, so that's probably more than what I need. We'll see. All right. And just having this piece of paper here did stop the individual kernels from falling over. Now we also need a really tiny amount in the trickler side. So I forgot to put that in here. So I'm gonna put just like that, right? That's probably less than one cartridge full. That might even be too much for all I know. Okay, so we have it here. Now the first thing we need to do is to calibrate the trickler. So we press the two buttons here simultaneously for a few seconds. Oh, first of all, of course, turn on first. All right, actually calibrating just by turning on. I did have a couple kernels drop out here. I'm not really sure from what. At the risk of not contaminating my powder, I'll take it out. Okay, so it calibrated, bulk 50.36, kernel 0.021 grains. So every kernel is 0.021 grains in weight is what it says. So we're gonna pour this back in to the hopper. Let's see, you gotta be careful here. I don't want the powder spilling out because the vibration might make it fall. Even this might make it fall. Okay, all right. So this cup did not have powder stick onto it right now, but smaller ball powders may. All right, so we put it here in the middle. Now we want to set our load, right? So we have it on, and what we want to do is turn that off. Okay, target 56. So I actually want 57.2 for my load. Okay, so that went too high. All right, 57.2, that's my load. And then I just press the middle button here, and I'm gonna keep this open, and it's gonna dispense. Okay. I made a mistake here. We're gonna start this again. Okay. So I forgot to change out the disk here. All right. So the disk right now is set to vargit, and so it doesn't work too well for these large kernels for obvious reasons, right? So I'm gonna take this out of here, and I need to change out the disk. Right, so just take the disk out and put the other disk in. Okay. Now we're gonna restart the calibration process here. Right, so to restart the calibration process, hold the two buttons. Okay, and then press the middle button to start the calibration. You'll notice in the middle here, there's a little bit of powder bridging there in the gap. Okay, so calibrating the bulk and now the fine. Okay, so it says the kernel is 0.077 grains. Okay, so that's actually probably more accurate because the last time I did that it was about the same amount. Okay, so we're gonna put this back in here. All right. Now that calibration is done, we can turn this off. We set our target to what we want, so 57.2 for me, and then hit the middle button to start. Yeah, that's much faster now, okay. So that was overthrow, 0.08 grains. All right, let's put this back. Let's try that again. Perfect. It took 12,791. I don't know what that translates to, but maybe that is in milliseconds. So I'm gonna pour it in here. All right, so the next one. Okay. To the overthrow. Now, my fine trickler here is almost out of powder, so it looks like it prefers to use quite a bit of the fine trickling. So I'm gonna restart that one, pour the powder into the fine trickler. Okay, so 57.26. That is within 1 grain of what it thinks one kernel, within one kernel's weight of what it thinks a kernel weight. So this is technically within spec. I would have preferred it to not have that extra kernel. So we can take the kernel out if we want to. Maybe we will. So let me grab something to remove it here. Okay, so I'm gonna use this little scooper just to remove one kernel. Okay, one kernel out. Put it back in here. Took the kernel out. Let's see how much it weighs. 57.22. Okay, so that's good enough. All right, put it in here. And we get the next charge. Okay. that was overthrow. Now that could be because I put too much powder in here. It should be quite a bit less probably. Okay, 10480. Perfect. 7932. Okay, next one. Okay, it says push to add kernel. But what I pushed? This one? Push up to add kernel? Underthrow detected, but what do I want pressed? Okay, so basically use the on-off button to put one in. Okay. Okay, so that's better. So I can use that to fine trickle one kernel at a time. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's still underthrow. I think I want to go a bit higher. It's technically within one kernel. Now it's one kernel over. Okay, so we can take one kernel back out here. Okay, so that's one kernel back out. Let's weigh that again. 5722. Okay. Okay, so 2.6. I think that is a kernel over what I want. Okay, this is a small kernel that I took back out. Yep, okay, now it's the same. So that's an overthrow. Let's put this back in and let it do it again. Okay, so that's close enough. That took 9 seconds, perhaps. Okay, that's an overthrow. Let's just put it back. So a lot of the powder on the fine trickler side is at the top of the disc, and I think it should actually not go that high. So my guess is a design where this is more slanted, so the powders fall back faster would be better. For this powder, it's not falling back down. It's a lot of it is on the top, which you don't want. So now it's good. I took one kernel out. With a chunky powder like this, taking one kernel out is doable. So let me load the 10 and then you guys can decide how you like the performance of it. Okay, that's one kernel over again. I'm gonna finish loading all of this 50, but you guys won't want to see all of that. So when we come back, I will use a different powder. All right, so I have 13 more cases to load here. So what have I seen so far, right? I've seen like maybe like 5 overthrows so far where it's so overthrown I'm not gonna use that load because it's more than one kernel off. But I also noticed that the system prefers to be a kernel over the weight that you set than to be under. And what I mean from that is that when the system thinks that it has the correct charge where the light lights up, it will light up when it's at the weight or a kernel over the weight. But if it's less than one kernel under the weight, it will prefer to give you that extra kernel, which may be slightly over your target, but it may also even go one kernel above it. In this case, it may be, it's just one kernel because it thinks each kernel is a 0.06 grains when, from what I've done with removing the individual kernels, it's more like 0.04 grains per kernel here. So it likes to give you that extra kernel. So if you're thinking about how much you're setting the value to be for your throw, it's actually like half a kernel over, I think, when you're averaging it out. Half a kernel over what you set it to be. So I'm going to put a few more back into the fine trickler there, and we'll continue on. Now I've also noticed a little bit of binding, meaning the disc here makes some weird noise where you could clearly hear that it's binding on probably a kernel. Now that one was an overthrow, so I put it back in. I think that was 2 overthrows in a row here. But the binding here did clear itself up by itself. So it's overthrown again, probably because there are too many kernels in there. So let me get a brush and brush that down actually. Before we do that, let's put the cup, let's turn off and then put the cup here, because if we start brushing it, very likely it will drop a kernel, and it did. Right, so let's put that back in. There's 3 kernels dropped, and turn it back on. What I noticed here is some kernels were broken and became flattened, or maybe they were just flat kernels, and it went over underneath this piece, which we don't want to have. Okay, so that was a perfect throw there. When you have kernels passing through this divider, what happens is it will end up over there binding up, and we don't want that. Okay, so that was an overthrow. That was actually just 2 kernels. I take it out. So it says 0.28 at the end, right? So I took 2 kernels out here. And if it's 0.06 grains per kernel that it says here, then this should read 0.16, but it's actually 0.20. So it's actually 0.04 per grain. I mean, 0.04 grains per kernel. Let's overthrow again. Yeah, we definitely have to keep the number of kernels here to a minimum. I would say 15 to 20 grains only. So 2.4, it says it's good. Okay, 2.4. So again, like I said, it'll stop at the charge rate you want, or a kernel, maybe kernel and a half over, but it will not say it's a good charge when it's under. It'll put in the extra kernel. So again, there's 2 kernels. I'm gonna just manually take 2 out. Okay, so that's that 1.8, and as you saw, it was yellow, and it prefers to put in an extra kernel. I think for me, if I set it to 57.20, and even if the kernel is 0.06 in weight, when it reaches 0.17, I think that would be considered acceptable. But in this, because then it will average to the amount you want. But in this case, it actually averages half a kernel above what you want. That was overthrow. This cup without a hand, though, I am not loving it. I actually have this 3D printed powder cup, but it does not like me using it. It thinks it's empty. I think it's not heavy enough. There's a kernel here. Speed-wise, is really nice. Well, at least much nicer than my RCBS Chargemaster Lite, and it's more accurate. But, so right now it did stop at 1.8, but it's a little bit more than 1.8. It's hovering between it. That's over. That's probably like 4 grains too many. Okay, that's 4 grains, 4 kernels. Okay, add a kernel back for me. All right, last one for the 6.5 PRC. Perfect, 7 seconds. So we're gonna stop that. Okay. Now, before I load these, I want to show you how I intend to put the extra powder away. So I'm going to put this to the side here and make sure I don't make a mess. Okay. So this is okay. We want to put the cup back in here because there are kernels in between here. We don't want those kernels falling. Okay, so I'm gonna take the fine trickler, and it probably helps if I have my wiring management done better. Okay, so there are a few grains of powder falling off, and I'm gonna put this back in here. That is making a little bit of a mess. I think it would be nice if there was a kind of a lip here, specifically like kind of a pointed lip here that can channel all the kernels back in. Now, because I will be changing powders into a smaller size powder, I'm going to take that disc out and pour the rest of these kernels in here. I'll put this to the side for now. Now this one's going to be hard to take care of, so we have to carefully remove this again. We want to tilt it down that way because otherwise the powder will fall out. And I think the best way that I found is just to tilt this mouth over. Okay, now because this is a chunky powder, it doesn't free flow out. But if it was a small stick powder or a ball powder, it will just come out here directly, and so you don't have to tilt it back this way. But for me, I have to go back this way for this powder. And I don't know if you can notice, but powder is spilling from here a little bit. And I have to be careful with this. Now, I think next time I will use a funnel. I am losing powder right there. All right. So there are kernels of powder falling into my hand here and all over the place. So it does have a little bit of a mess. Now, take that out. Okay. Now we should take this disc out, right? And inspect it to make sure there's no powder stuck to the side, because that would cause binding, or on the disc here. We don't want any binding. There we go. That's back in. All right. And so that's how I clean this up. There might be a better way to do this than what I just did. Okay, let me put this powder away. Never have multiple powders on your table. Be right back.